The Daniel Penny verdict, I think, look, folks, this is when we talk about de-weaponizing law enforcement, I don't just mean at the federal level, I mean at the state level too. And we talked about how in a Supreme Court case, my dad argued for President Trump, and I was the lead chair, but we were having to do it from literally, we built the Supreme Court over there. And we were arguing that, a president should not be subject to the political whims of over 2,500, nearly 3,000 local DAs that are partisan elected. And of course, that shouldn't happen to the president, but it also, our DAs, whether they were elected because they're Republican or Democrat, should not have their politics play into the role when you're talking about murder. When you're talking about, is this a good Samaritan or is this a bad guy? And in this case, everyone knew this guy did something heroic. Is it a tragedy that a life was lost? Of course. Yes, but the life that was lost was someone who had regularly threatened lives on the subway and was doing so at the time, and he was protecting women, children, and others who were stuck in a tube with nowhere to go. And this crazy person was obviously on drugs, which makes them even harder to subdue. And when he did subdue them, obviously, if you see the video, because they're on drugs, they're pushing back hard and lost their life, unfortunately. But how many lives were saved?
Well, and Jordan, I think
that's
another
what the juries
thing,
think about, because they ride those subways.
It makes people question the leadership and the priorities of those in law enforcement in cities like New York. And hopefully we are going to see, you've already heard Mayor Adams start to change his tune. Now that President Trump has been elected, talking about the safety of the citizens when it comes to the migrant crisis in New York. But hopefully you'll see other law enforcement district attorneys, mayors in these large cities in America start to change their tune and say, wait, our job is to keep our cities safe, not to push progressive ideology, woke agendas. It's to keep our citizens safe, to make sure the infrastructure holds. And we've been seeing that fall to the wayside in far too many American cities over the past decades.
The law is careful there on Good Samaritan work. You have to make sure that if you are going to engage, that you will take the consequences of engagement. That means what could happen to you, and also your training is taken into account. But here, again, this person was threatening to kill people. He wasn't just acting crazy. He was threatening to kill people. So why aren't we saying we had the Guardian Angels,
right,
we've had other groups in New York.
What happened now?
And it worked. New York, it took about 10, 15 years. And if you did more work quickly with funding, you could do it quicker than that. And New York could be back to that place where people don't think twice about going. We have to get to a point where Daniel Penny doesn't have to go bankrupt or raise hundreds of thousands of dollars on Kickstarter to defend himself, because these cases shouldn't be in court. They should be investigated because someone died, and that should be it.
And Jordan, it can't be lost on who the prosecutor was that decided to go after Daniel Penny for being a hero. Alvin Bragg, the same district attorney that decided to go after President Trump and to create out of whole cloth a way to use state law against him for what would have been campaign finance violations and try to make a political prosecution there. It's all political in New York. It needs to get back to protecting the people of the city and prosecuting the real criminals.
When the jury heard all the evidence, we already knew the manslaughter was out. They were supposedly deadlocked on that. But it's interesting because then the judge brought in the second charge that they had to decide on, which is lower than manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, which is negligent homicide. Right. And when they went to the jury on that, they found him not guilty. So I'm not sure why. And sometimes that's just the jury not understanding even the
I was hearing
complex differences, why this didn't happen last week. But it is a good sign that our legal system in the U.S. still can be saved.
Everyone looking at the facts of this, I'm sorry, if you look at the facts of what happened and you watch what happened, how you can say that this person did the wrong thing
and deserves to be in jail for the rest of his
absurd.
Adult life. Coming out of jail, he'd be 60-something years old because he saved people on a subway train from a bad actor who probably should have been out in public.
Well, in that second-degree manslaughter charge, which was the first thing that the jury was deadlocked on last week, the judge sent it back to them with some more instruction, came back, still deadlocked, and then the judge said, all right, I'm dismissing that charge, the higher charge of second-degree manslaughter. and then told the jury, look at the lesser charge of negligent homicide. The jury on Friday then had a question about the reasonable person language within negligent homicide, which would mean that did Daniel Penny act outside of what a reasonable person in their right state of mind would do? And what, as you mentioned, Jordan, is interesting is that they were so quickly able to acquit him of the lesser charge when they were deadlocked on the more serious one. Now, this lesser charge would have still carried around 4 years in prison potentially. So he was still facing the jeopardy of prison time. I know that the father of Neely, who was the person who died in the attack, he has already filed a large civil lawsuit against Daniel Penny. But when you heard the witnesses, that there was a mother who had her 5-year-old son that was taking him to a doctor's appointment and barricaded him behind a stroller. Another woman called it a satanic rant that Neely was going on. These people were terrorized and living in fear in that moment on that train. And as you say, you never know what a jury is going to decide or come out with and how they hear it. But I think the closing arguments of Daniel Penny's attorney were really effective when it said, who would you want to be sitting next to on a train? The man with earbuds, minding his own business, but will take action when you need him to? Or would you rather be all alone on the train when someone is having a psychotic moment?
I think this also brings up a much broader issue, which is New York and a lot of these cities built on having these kind of transportation systems for people that are affordable, that are fast and reliable. They have become areas of great crime and areas of stress and areas where people are unsafe.
People are working in the city too.
Right. So
you
now
don't
we have
that mass protection that you used to have. If you went in rush hour,
so many people,
it was going to be full. If you went home when most companies close, it was going to be full. And so you were really only having to protect yourself late at night, really late at night, like on during the week. On weekends, busy all through the night.
Yeah, I think that this becomes an issue that New York has to really take a look at. Eric Adams, everyone got to look at and go, okay, how can we actually make this safe? They keep coming up with solutions. They don't really quite get there.
Come to New York. We've been, you've been, I mean, like.
Yeah, but I'm taking my kids on the subway. That's just the truth. It's not happening.
I don't. And
because
I'm someone, I lived in Washington, D.C. I used their metro my whole life. And have been happy to do it when I'm with friends in New York who actually understand how it works.
Yeah.
But if you're just trying to go like 1 or 2 stops with kids, it's a nice little way because they walk slower.
I'm saying all you need to do is figure out how to make this safe again and make these cities more appealing to come to. This is a good step.
You got to get the politics out of law enforcement.
I'm saying this is a good step.
Yeah. No, this is a great step because it shows these prosecutors you are wasting taxpayer dollars and your prosecutions are becoming a joke.